Imagine standing on the biggest stage of your life. Thousands of eyes watching. A microphone in front of you. And just seconds before you speak, a security guard pulls you off stage, accusing you of cheating, with fake evidence planted by the son of the dean. But what happens next? She didn't just fight back, she exposed an entire scandal and shook Harvard to its core. Stick around because this isn't a movie. It's a true story of one girl versus the system, and how she won. And hey, before we dive in, if you love stories about underdogs, resilience, and exposing the truth, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Imagine walking into a room where every stare feels like a silent threat, where every glance screams, "You don't belong here." That's exactly how Aisha Carter felt the first moment she stepped into Harvard's Sanders Auditorium for the National Public Speaking Championship. Aisha wasn't just another competitor. She was the only student from a public high school in Detroit, standing among kids from elite prep schools, private academies, and legacy families. While others wore tailored blazers and designer shoes, Aisha's outfit was a careful assembly of thrift store finds and dollar store confidence. Her heart pounded as she clutched the worn-out spiral notebook she had carried since 9th grade. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was years of late-night practice, tear-stained pages, and her mom's handwritten pep talk stuffed between speech drafts. As she walked past the registration table, a tall figure blocked her path. Ethan Blackwood. Perfect hair, perfect suit, and an ego that filled the entire auditorium. Son of Dean Blackwood, the man who oversaw the entire tournament and the communications department at Harvard. Lost? Ethan's voice dripped with smug amusement. Or just here for moral support? A few chuckles erupted from his circle of friends, each one wearing the same Harvard crimson like a badge of superiority. Aisha's throat tightened, but she forced a smile. Nope, competitor, just like you. Ethan's smirk deepened. Well, good luck with that. Before she could respond, one of the tournament officials called for all participants to gather near the stage for orientation. As Aisha found a seat at the far corner, her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. Mom, remember, baby. They might have the stage, but you've got the story. A small smile crept across Aisha's face. She pulled out a battered highlighter and started marking her speech notes again, blocking out the whispers around her. Orientation began with the usual procedural rundown. Time limits, judging criteria, disqualification rules. But when Dean Blackwood himself took the mic, the room shifted. As always, he boomed, Harvard sets the gold standard for public discourse. We expect eloquence, poise, and let's be honest, a certain level of refinement. A few students laughed politely. Aisha's stomach twisted. The subtext wasn't even subtle. Dean Blackwood's eyes casually swept the room, barely lingering on her before moving on. It was clear she was invisible to him. Just another placeholder, a statistic, a diversity pick. After the orientation, participants were allowed to tour the hall and familiarize themselves with the stage setup. Aisha stood at the back, mentally rehearsing her opening line. That's when it happened. Ethan, standing with two friends near the sound booth, glanced over at her and muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "I give her 2 minutes before she crumbles." His friends snorted with laughter. Heat surged through Aisha's chest, but she stayed silent. She knew better than to feed the fire this early. As the afternoon wore on, preliminary groupings were posted on the bulletin board. Aisha scanned the list. Her name was dead last. Again. Typical. Dead last meant low audience energy, inattentive judges, and being the afterthought in every round. But as she turned to leave, her eye caught something else. Her first round opponent? Ethan Blackwood. Of course, Her stomach dropped. Was this coincidence or planned? The room suddenly felt colder. The chatter around her blurred into white noise. But deep down, something shifted. A slow, burning resolve ignited. If they wanted a spectacle, she'd give them one. Aisha walked out of the auditorium, notebook in hand, head high. Tomorrow, she wasn't just going to deliver a speech, she was going to make them listen. The next morning, Harvard's Sanders Auditorium buzzed with electric anticipation. The marble columns and red velvet chairs gave the place an almost regal presence, like history itself was watching. Aisha sat backstage, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a war drum. Her palms were sweaty despite the chill in the air. She glanced at the digital schedule projected on the wall. Round 1, Ethan Blackwood versus Aisha Carter. She exhaled slowly, trying to steady her nerves. Her phone lit up with another text from her mom. "Mom, you didn't come this far to be quiet now." Aisha smiled faintly, locked her screen, and stood up just as the stage coordinator called her name. From her position backstage, she could hear Ethan already starting his opening remarks. His voice was smooth, rehearsed, dripping with performative charm. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, pacing with calculated ease, "we're here today to discuss opportunity. And let's be honest, not everyone understands what that word truly means." A small wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. Aisha's stomach twisted. Ethan kept going. His arguments were peppered with statistics, exaggerated anecdotes, and sly jabs thinly veiled as humor. "At institutions like Harvard," he continued, turning slightly toward her side of the stage without making direct eye contact, "we uphold merit, not pity, not sympathy votes, just merit." A few more laughs followed. Even some of the judges smiled. Aisha inhaled deeply, squeezing her notebook tight enough to crinkle the pages. When Ethan concluded, the applause was louder than necessary, almost mocking. The moderator called her name. Aisha stepped onto the stage, her shoes clicking against the hardwood floor, every step heavier than the last. The lights felt hotter, the air thinner. She placed her notebook on the podium and adjusted the microphone with shaky fingers. For a heartbeat, the auditorium felt like it was holding its breath. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a voice rang out from the middle of the audience. Loud, clear. "Let's go, Ethan. This should be quick." The words stabbed like a dagger. A wave of muffled laughter rippled through the crowd. Aisha froze for a split second. Then, something clicked. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Let them laugh. But when you speak, make them wish they hadn't." She lifted her gaze, steady and fierce. "Before I begin," she said slowly, letting her words fill every corner of the room, "I'd like to thank Harvard for reminding me what real pressure feels like, because apparently, for some people here, speaking while being underestimated is just another Tuesday." The room hushed. No laughter this time. She dived in. Her speech wasn't polished like Ethan's, but it was something better, raw and real. She spoke of growing up in Detroit's East Side, of overcrowded classrooms and broken school heating systems, of nights she stayed awake studying next to a cracked window because the electricity had been shut off again. Her voice shook with emotion, but never with fear. "This isn't about pity," she declared mid-speech, locking eyes with one of the judges who had smiled at Ethan earlier. "This is about potential, about recognizing voices you're not used to hearing, and learning that volume doesn't equal value." She tore through every argument Ethan had made, dismantling his points with lived experience and undeniable logic. By the time she reached her closing line, "If opportunity were measured by where you start, none of us would be here debating this. but it's measured by how far you're willing to fight to get to this podium. There wasn't a sound in the room, no sarcastic claps, no whispers, just silence, charged and heavy. As she stepped down, Ethan shot her a glare. His confident smile had faltered just slightly. The judges scribbled furiously on their notepads. Walking back to her seat, Aisha's heart thumped wildly. She didn't know if she had won this round, but she knew one thing for sure. They weren't laughing anymore. The next day, the results for round 1 were posted on the bulletin board just outside the auditorium. Aisha's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the list. Quarter-finalists: Ethan Blackwood Priya, Anand Marcus Liu, Aisha Carter. Her name was there, barely in the top 8, but she was in. A slow, relieved smile spread across her face. Before she could fully process the victory, she heard Ethan's voice behind her. Well, Detroit makes the cut," he drawled, standing just inches away. His friends lingered nearby, smirking. "But don't get comfortable. Quarterfinals get messy." Aisha's stomach churned, but she met his gaze without flinching. "I like messy," she said quietly, turning to leave. But as she walked down the hallway, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That evening, in the tiny dorm room assigned to her, Aisha sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, researching the next debate topic. Resolved, social media does more harm than good for youth empowerment. Her eyes scanned case studies, psychological research, real-life examples. She opened multiple tabs, bookmarked studies, and outlined counterarguments. Around midnight, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, no name. She hesitated but opened the text. "Watch your tone tomorrow, Detroit. One mistake and you're done." Her blood ran cold. Her heart pounded as she scrolled back through her contacts. The number wasn't saved. The area code wasn't even local. She quickly locked her phone and tossed it aside, forcing herself to breathe. Was it Ethan? Someone from his circle? No time to dwell. She doubled down on her prep, pouring every ounce of focus into her speech notes. By 2 a.m., her room looked like a war zone. Papers scattered, sticky notes on the walls, coffee cups piling up. But her speech was ready. The next morning, the auditorium was packed tighter than ever. Word had spread about the girl from Detroit. More students, more professors, more cameras. As she waited backstage, Aisha noticed something strange. A group of students, ones she'd never even spoken to, were standing in a corner, whispering and glancing at her. When she made eye contact, they quickly looked away. Aisha's gut twisted. Were they talking about her, or planning something? Her phone buzzed again. This time, another anonymous text. "Better hope you've got thick skin. Judges don't like troublemakers." Her hands trembled. She looked around, scanning faces. Was it someone in the audience? Another competitor? One of the staff? No time to figure it out. The stage coordinator called her name. Aisha inhaled deeply, gathered her notes, and walked toward the spotlight. As she stood at the podium, she felt the weight of every stare. Ethan sat in the front row, his arms crossed, smirking like he already knew something she didn't. Her throat tightened. The moderator gave her the signal, and just as she opened her mouth to speak, the microphone crackled, then died. Static filled the auditorium. Whispers rippled through the room. Panic surged inside her. The tech team scrambled, checking wires. In the front row, Ethan's smirk grew wider. The moderator stepped forward, tapping the mic. "We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please hold." Aisha stepped back, her heart racing. This couldn't be a coincidence. First the texts, now this? Her mind screamed, "Sabotage!" She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. Her mom's words rang in her ears. They can mess with the mic, but they can't control your voice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the mic crackled back to life. The moderator gestured for her to continue. Aisha stepped forward again. This time, louder, fiercer. If anyone here thought a broken mic would break me, you clearly haven't been paying attention. A few heads snapped up, and with that, she launched into her speech. Aisha's voice rang through the auditorium with a force that felt bigger than her own body. She didn't need theatrics. She didn't need perfect stage lighting or a state-of-the-art microphone. All she needed was truth. With every word, she dismantled the resolution. Case by case, story by story. She spoke about how social media had been the only platform for kids like her to organize safe spaces back home. How viral fundraisers helped families put food on the table. How digital activism gave the voices to the voiceless. As she reached her final point, the room had shifted. Gone were the distracted judges tapping their pens. Gone were the students scrolling through their phones. All eyes were on her. Even Ethan, arms still crossed, sat upright now, jaw tight. When she stepped down, the applause wasn't thunderous, but it was real, and for Aisha, that was enough. But the victory was short-lived. As she made her way back to her seat, she caught a glimpse of two students in Ethan's circle leaning against the wall near the judge's exit. They were speaking in low voices, glancing between her and their phones. Her stomach twisted. Her instincts screamed, "Something's coming." That night, back in her dorm, Aisha barely had time to process her performance when another anonymous email popped up in her inbox. Subject: Immediate disqualification notice. Her heart stopped. She opened it. The message claimed she had violated tournament protocol by receiving outside coaching during the competition, an automatic disqualification offense. Attached was a blurry photo, her sitting in the campus cafe with her friend Lila from Detroit just 30 minutes before her round. Her breath caught in her throat. That meeting had nothing to do with debate. Lila was just there for moral support. They hadn't even talked about the competition. But the timestamp, the framing, it looked bad. Too bad to be coincidence. Aisha's hands shook as she read the closing line of the email. Final decision pending review by Dean Blackwood. Her heart sank. Of course, Dean Blackwood, Ethan's father. The puzzle pieces were clicking together too fast. The anonymous texts, the microphone glitch. Now this? Aisha slammed her laptop shut, her pulse racing. Panic clawed at her throat. But just as the fear threatened to take over, another buzz came. Her phone. Mom, whatever they throw at you, remember, they're scared for a reason. Aisha sat frozen for a second, then stood up abruptly. She grabbed her hoodie, shoved her notebook into her bag, and left the dorm. She had one place to go: the debate office. It was nearly midnight, but she didn't care. If they were going to disqualify her, they were going to do it to her face. She marched across campus, her breath visible in the cold air. When she reached the administrative wing, the building was dark except for a single light coming from the debate committee room. Through the glass window, she saw him, Dean Blackwood, sitting at his desk, and across from him, Ethan, leaning over, pointing at something on the dean's laptop screen. Her stomach dropped. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear anything else. She knew she shouldn't, but she stayed there, watching. For a full minute, she stood frozen outside the door, taking it all in. Ethan laughing quietly, Dean Blackwood nodding. Then, Dean Blackwood opened his email inbox, and Aisha's blurry cafe photo was right there, with the subject line, "Use this." Her entire body went cold. Before she could react, Ethan glanced toward the door. Their eyes met for one split second. Panic surged through her. Aisha ducked away from the window, heart hammering. They'd seen her. She needed a plan, and fast. Aisha sprinted back across campus, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Her mind raced faster than her legs. What she had just seen, it was undeniable. They were conspiring. Ethan and his father. They were manufacturing evidence to disqualify her, but how could she prove it? Bursting into her dorm room, she slammed the door behind her and locked it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone, scrolling through her recent texts and emails, searching for anything that could help. And then it hit her. Earlier that afternoon, when she met Lila at the campus cafe, she'd accidentally left her phone recording. She'd been using the voice memo app to rehearse her speech and forgot to turn it off when Lila arrived. Heart pounding, she opened the recording app. 2 hours and 17 minutes of audio. Fingers trembling, she hit play and scrubbed to the cafe timestamp. There it was. Background noise, silverware clinking, Lila talking about Detroit. Not a single word about debate strategy. Nothing that could be considered outside coaching. Relief flooded her, but it wasn't enough. A blurry photo could still outweigh audio evidence if the committee wanted her gone badly enough. She needed more. Her eyes darted to her laptop. Without thinking, she plugged in her phone, transferred the audio file, and began typing a timeline of every minute she'd spent that day. Then, another idea struck. Earlier, when she'd stood outside the debate committee room, hadn't she seen the timestamp of the email Dean Blackwood opened? Aisha pulled up her calendar and matched it against the moment she was outside the office. If she had been there before the fake disqualification email was sent, it meant she had witnessed them creating the setup in real time. But her word against theirs wouldn't be enough. She needed a witness. At 1:30 a.m., Aisha made a decision that terrified her more than public speaking ever had. She texted the one person who might hate Ethan enough to help, Priya Anand. Priya was ranked second in the tournament and had her own history of clashes with Ethan. Rumor was he'd stolen one of her speech ideas during a previous regional competition. Aisha's message was short and desperate. Priya, I need 5 minutes. Please, it's serious, about Ethan. For 15 agonizing minutes, there was no response. Then finally, 3 dots appeared. Priya, meet me at the quad, now. Wrapped in a hoodie and nerves, Aisha hurried to the quad. Priya stood waiting under a lamplight, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. You've got 5 minutes, Priya said flatly. Aisha wasted no time. She explained everything, the fake email, the photo, what she'd overheard outside the debate committee room. When she finished, Priya didn't speak for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I've got something too, Priya said finally. Aisha blinked. What? Last semester I caught Ethan bragging to someone about having access to the internal judging rubric, before rounds even started. Aisha's eyes widened. Priya scrolled through her saved voicemails and played an old recording. Ethan's voice came through, low but unmistakable. When your dad's the dean, score sheets aren't that hard to see early. Aisha's stomach flipped. This wasn't just sabotage, it was systemic cheating. Priya locked her phone and slipped it back in her pocket. I don't like you, Priya said coolly, but I hate cheaters more. Aisha exhaled shakily. Then, you'll help me? Priya nodded once. Yeah, let's blow this up. They spent the next hour compiling every piece of evidence they had, Aisha's voice memo. The suspicious timing of the fake email, Priya's recording from last semester at 3 a.m., they packaged it all in one file and emailed it. Not just to the debate committee, but also CC'd 2 faculty members known for their integrity, and for good measure, the student-run campus newspaper. By dawn, the fuse was lit. By the time the sun rose over Harvard's campus, the email Aisha and Priya had sent had already ignited a small wildfire. Whispers spread across breakfast tables. Group chats lit up with screenshots. By 9 a.m., a student-run social media page posted a cryptic but damning caption. Breaking. Allegations of score manipulation and competitor sabotage rock debate championship. Developing. Aisha sat in the corner of the dining hall, her breakfast untouched, staring at her phone as the comments poured in. Wait, is this about Ethan Blackwood? Nepotism strikes again? Whoever exposed this legend? Her heart pounded with a mix of terror and adrenaline. This was way bigger than she had expected, but the real test was still ahead. At 10 a.m., all quarter-finalists were called to a mandatory closed-door meeting in Sanders Auditorium. Aisha walked toward the building, her legs trembling. Priya fell into step beside her. "Stay cool," Priya whispered. "They're going to come at you first." Inside, the air crackled with tension. Dean Blackwood stood at the front of the room, his face pale but stone-cold furious. Ethan sat to the side, arms crossed, eyes burning holes into Aisha like lasers. The dean cleared his throat. "It has come to our attention that serious accusations have been made regarding the integrity of this tournament," he said, voice clipped and brittle. "Let me be perfectly clear. These claims are unfounded, slanderous, and dangerous to the reputation of this institution." Murmurs spread through the room. Aisha swallowed hard, but Priya nudged her gently under the table. Dean Blackwood continued, "We are conducting an internal review. Until then, all rounds will proceed as scheduled. Any competitor spreading false information will face immediate disqualification." Ethan's smirk returned, smug and triumphant. Aisha's stomach churned. But then, a voice from the back. Professor Keller, a soft-spoken faculty advisor known for keeping her distance from politics but respected by all. "Dean Blackwood," Professor Keller said, standing slowly. "I've reviewed the materials submitted last night, and I believe we owe it to every student in this room to conduct a fair and transparent investigation, starting with a hold on all final score tabulations until this is resolved." A visible wave of shock rippled through the audience. Ethan's face drained of color. Dean Blackwood froze, eyes narrowing. But before he could object, Professor Keller added, "I've also forwarded the file to the University Ethics Committee for independent review." Gasps echoed. Ethan slammed his notebook shut, his entire composure cracking. Aisha sat frozen. For the first time in days, she felt the ground shift under her feet, but this time in her favor. The next round began just an hour later, and though her heart still pounded, Aisha stepped onto that stage like a different person. The audience wasn't just watching for her arguments anymore. They were watching to see if the girl who had called out the system could still deliver under pressure. And deliver she did. Her speech wasn't just strong, it was electric. She tackled the debate topic with fire, citing not only research but also personal accountability, integrity, and the dangerous consequences of institutional bias. Every time she referenced fairness and truth, more heads turned. Even some of the judges looked visibly uncomfortable, like they were realizing just how compromised this whole competition had become. By the time she finished, the applause was louder than at any point in the tournament so far. Backstage, Priya gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. For the first time, Aisha allowed herself a smile. But as the day closed, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "You think this is over? Finals will be your funeral. Watch your back, Detroit." Her smile faded. She knew Ethan and his father weren't done, not yet, and whatever they had planned next, she had to be ready. The morning of the final round dawned with a cold drizzle, as if the sky itself sensed the storm about to unfold inside Sanders' auditorium. Aisha sat in the green room, staring at the tournament bracket posted on the wall. Finalists: Ethan Blackwood, Aisha Carter. Her heart pounded, but her resolve felt sharper than ever. As she reviewed her notes for the final topic, resolved, academic institutions should prioritize tradition over reform, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sense that something else was coming. Her instincts were right. 10 minutes before she was scheduled to go on stage, a campus security officer entered the green room. "Miss Carter," the officer said, his tone formal, eyes cold. "You're needed outside. Now." Confused, Aisha grabbed her bag and followed him. But instead of leading her toward the auditorium entrance, the officer took her down a side corridor toward the administrative wing. Her pulse spiked. This wasn't part of protocol. When they reached a small windowless conference room, she found Dean Blackwood waiting inside. Ethan stood behind him, arms crossed, a smug grin stretched across his face like victory had already been declared. Aisha froze. "What is this?" she demanded. Dean Blackwood motioned toward a file folder on the table. "We've received a formal complaint," he said coolly. "An anonymous tip alleges that you plagiarized your last speech." Her stomach dropped. Number: absolutely not. Dean Blackwood flipped the folder open, revealing a printout, lines from her last speech, side by side with an obscure academic journal article from 2017. The phrasing was similar, but not exact, and Aisha had never even seen that article before. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice trembling with fury. "Unfortunately, the timing leaves little room for a thorough investigation before the finals," Dean Blackwood continued, completely unfazed. "Therefore, unless you'd like to voluntarily withdraw, you'll be allowed to compete under protest. But be aware, your final score may be held pending the plagiarism review." Ethan leaned against the wall, pretending to study his nails. Aisha's fists clenched at her sides. They weren't trying to beat her in debate anymore. They were trying to psychologically break her. Her chest heaved as she fought back tears. "Not now, not here." "Fine," she said hoarsely. "I'll compete, and when I win, we'll talk about real plagiarism." Without waiting for a reply, she turned on her heel and stormed back toward the stage. By the time she reached the podium, the audience was already buzzing. Word of the latest accusation had traveled fast. She could see it in the way people whispered, glanced at her with narrowed eyes, or deliberately avoided her gaze. Ethan took the stage first. His opening was pure theater, full of lofty language about preserving legacy, upholding standards, protecting academic traditions from external pressures that dilute excellence. His friends in the front row cheered loudly after every punchline. When he finished, he sauntered back to his seat like the trophy was already his. Aisha stepped forward. For a long beat, she stood silent at the podium, letting the weight of the moment hang. Her hands trembled. Her throat burned. But when she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "I was told I shouldn't be standing here today," she began, locking eyes with Ethan. "Some people tried to make sure of it, in more ways than one." The room fell silent. She launched into her argument, tearing apart the romanticism of tradition for tradition's sake. She spoke of broken systems, of silenced voices, of how clinging to outdated standards only served those already at the top. She referenced historical moments when institutions were forced to change. from desegregation to the first women admitted to Ivy League schools. Her voice rose with every point. "This isn't just about a debate round," she said, glancing toward the judges. "It's about who gets to define integrity and who gets to manipulate it." The tension in the room thickened. Some students leaned forward in their seats. Even a few faculty members exchanged uneasy glances. As she delivered her final line, "Tradition isn't an excuse for injustice, and today I choose reform." Half the auditorium erupted in applause, not polite, not hesitant, genuine. For the first time, Aisha saw Ethan's smirk falter completely. But as she stepped off the stage, her phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "Check your email now." Her blood ran cold because something told her the real battle hadn't even started yet. Aisha's hands shook as she unlocked her phone and opened her email. Subject line: "For your eyes only, truth about Blackwood." Her breath hitched. Attached were screenshots, lots of them. Internal emails, judging rubrics. Even a PDF of pre-filled scorecards for Ethan from earlier rounds, before the debates had even happened. Her eyes widened as she scrolled. One email stood out. From Ethan to a close friend. "Relax. Dad's making sure the judges get the memo. Detroit doesn't stand a chance." Her stomach twisted. This was nuclear. And then came the final blow. A secret audio recording. An anonymous source had captured Dean Blackwood and two judges in the dean's office discussing how to bury that Detroit girl before the finals. Aisha couldn't breathe. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from pure, shaking adrenaline. Her phone buzzed again, another text, this time from Priya. "You need to send it. Now, don't wait." Without hesitating, Aisha hit forward. She sent the entire folder, not just to the ethics committee, but CC'd every judge, the Harvard student newspaper, and, for good measure, the official email list of all tournament participants. Then, she sat back and waited. 10 minutes later, the auditorium doors burst open mid-award ceremony. Professor Keller and two faculty members stormed the stage, whispering urgently to the moderator. The moderator's face went pale. "Ladies and gentlemen," he stammered into the microphone, "we, have just been informed of a serious development regarding the integrity of this competition." Gasps rippled through the audience. Ethan, seated front row, stiffened like someone had poured ice water down his spine. Dean Blackwood appeared from the side wing, face flushed, already dialing his phone. Too late. The moderator cleared his throat again. "Effective immediately, the final round results are under suspension pending formal review. Additionally, Dean Blackwood is hereby being placed on administrative leave. Effective this moment." Pandemonium. Students stood, some shouted. Phones came out. Someone started live streaming. Ethan's friends shrank back like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Aisha sat frozen in her chair, stunned. Priya slid into the seat beside her, elbowing her gently. "Well," Priya whispered, smirking, "looks like you just took down a dynasty." Over the next 48 hours, things moved fast. An emergency faculty board convened. Harvard's Office of Student Integrity opened a formal investigation. Multiple judges resigned under pressure. And as for Ethan Blackwood, disqualified, effective immediately. His father, facing suspension, with media already circling like sharks. But the biggest shock came 3 days later. A public statement from Harvard. "In light of new evidence regarding scoring manipulation and participant harassment, we are pleased to announce that Aisha Carter is the official winner of the National Public Speaking Championship." Her name, in writing, on the front page of the campus website. Aisha stared at the screen in her dorm, tears spilling freely now. Her mom's call came seconds later. "Baby, they couldn't break you." That evening, Aisha stood on the steps outside Sanders' auditorium, the same place where she had once felt like an outsider. Now, students she didn't even know approached her, offering high fives, words of encouragement, hugs. "Legend," one girl whispered as she passed. Professor Keller walked by, giving her a proud nod. And then Priya approached. "We still aren't friends," Priya said, but her grin softened. "But if you ever want to team up for next year's national circuit, call me." Aisha laughed for the first time in days. Looking up at the Harvard skyline, she breathed in the cold night air. This place, this stage. It hadn't been built for girls like her. But she'd taken it anyway, and now, she wasn't just a competitor. She was the story no one would forget. As Aisha stood on those cold stone steps, looking back at the building that had once made her feel so small, she realized something powerful. Winning wasn't just about trophies. It was about making them listen. About showing everyone that where you come from doesn't define where you're going. And maybe the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the loudest voice in the room is the one they tried the hardest to silence. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another true story like this. Because with your support, we'll keep bringing you the voices that deserve to be heard.